Hello and welcome to Your Employment Matters. I'm Beverly Williams and I'm here to help you navigate your career. This is for anyone who's searching for their dream job or promotion, or perhaps you're just looking to hang on to the job you have. Today's work environments are multi-generational, multi-religious, multinational, multiracial, and multi-gender identity. Add market disruptors like Amazon and Lyft, along with the addition of AI, and it's easy to see why finding and keeping a job is such a challenge. Employment success and even employment survival depend on your ability to adapt. That's why my goal for this 30-minute podcast is to first advocate embracing change and differences, and second, to encourage you to proactively assume responsibility for your career. Get your work week off to a good start by listening to Your Employment Matters every Monday. Find out how to own your career and get the best practices for making your employment matter. Old school face-to-face networking done effectively is one of the best, if not the best way to prepare for your employment journey. Many, if not most people, get jobs and promotions through networking. So if you want to get hired or promoted, dust off the network you probably used to land your current job. Please keep in mind that networks not only should be kept updated and contacts nurtured, they should be expanded continuously. It makes good business sense to touch base periodically with your networking contacts just to say hello. Why? It's simple. Keeping in touch eliminates the awkwardness of only reaching out to people when you need them. How would you feel if you only heard from someone when he or she needed something? People want and are willing to assist you, but remember to be considerate and thoughtful, because there are great stories about people getting job leads from unexpected sources. You never know who's watching you in your neighborhood, in the grocery store, and elsewhere. Even at work, as you go along about your daily routine, you're being watched. Believe it or not, people pay attention to how you conduct yourself in meetings, how you treat coworkers and other employees, and how you handle yourself daily and in challenging situations. My guest today is Dr. Julie Lane-Hailey, who is an organizational development professional with domestic and global experience in learning, strategy creation, implementation, team effectiveness, executive development, and skills assessment. Dr. Lane-Hailey has an undergraduate degree from Douglas College in New Jersey, a Master of Social Work from Hunter College in New York City, and a PhD in Organizational Development from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Dr. Lane-Hailey just happens to be one of my oldest and dearest girlfriends in the world, and the very best networker I know. She is Julie, or Jewel to me. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Beverly.
Well, why don't we get to it? Julie, you've had an interesting career. Why don't you share your employment journey with our listeners today?
Sure, I'd be glad to. I always love hearing the introductions to series like this, to podcasts, because sometimes it just reminds me how much I need to appreciate some of the many opportunities that I've had, and to remember how those opportunities came to be. That's pretty much the foundation for how I want to walk you through my employment journey, if you will. I started out coming out of undergraduate school like so many other young folks. Of course, for me, this was many years ago, let's say about 30 plus, and just not really knowing what I wanted to do. And I said, I think maybe I'll go to graduate school. That seems like a great thing. Of course, that is a great thing. However, at the end of graduate school, I had to ask myself again, what do I want to do? And for me, the beginning of understanding how humble one must be in the job search is to begin the job search knowing you are totally qualified. You have really, dotted every I, you've crossed every T just in terms of getting everything that you needed in order. That's wrong. Because if you don't have a connection, if you don't have someone who can help you, first of all, perhaps look at your resume or understand where you can be looking, it's just, it's a very disconcerting process. The way that I actually got my first job was through a family friend. Now, once again, this is already equipped with all those degrees that Beverly mentioned. Okay. So I'm thinking I had, a great, shot at it, or a great opportunity to have my foot in the door. However, if nobody opens that door a teeny bit, it's hard to get your foot in. So a great family friend that my mother reminded me of had contacts in the corporate world. And that is how I got into Xerox. So that was the beginning of my understanding of the importance of reaching out to family, reaching out to friends, not being afraid to raise your hand to say, hi, I need help. The first corporate job right after graduate school was Xerox. It was an awesome, awesome opportunity to work. Very progressive for people of color, for women. And I had lovely opportunities to have lots of visibility, get lots of presentation skills, training, etc. The next opportunity, once again, came from me reaching out to executive search firms because I was very interested in moving back to the southern part of the country. I was up in Rochester, New York, working for Xerox, and it was pretty cold up there. Through the research that I did on the executive search firms, and also through the continued networking, I had an opportunity to interview with Coca-Cola in Atlanta, Georgia, which I was very excited about. They offered me the position to be director of one of their training groups in USA. It's called Coca-Cola USA. So that was that second opportunity, which also came from networking, reaching out, doing my research, being persistent. And you'll hear me use that term through this whole podcast. You must be persistent. You've got to stay positive and kind of keep hanging in there. Coca-Cola was awesome. It was my first opportunity for a global assignment. Part of my time with Coca-Cola was spent in Johannesburg, South Africa, as a training manager there, and loved it. So once again, beginning now to develop an understanding of the global network, as well as what has to happen within each of our companies or our organizations. So those were the first couple of assignments. From there, after the Coca-Cola assignment, I had great opportunities to continue in corporate America, incidentally, also with some university work. And the university work came from, I always say, I can say this now because I am a seasoned professional myself. Opportunity came from a seasoned professional who, by the way, was retired. And I started talking to her about, the next phase in my life, what I wanted to do. And she said, oh, I have one of my previous students who has some contacts in your work area. Let me take your paperwork to her. And I'm telling you, in my mind, I'm going, sure, sure. How could she know anyone who might be able to help me? So bottom line, folks, that was my next assignment. And it was just incredible. So in addition to the corporate assignments, I had an opportunity to be a dean of leadership development for DeVry University, based in Georgia. DeVry is a national university, but their headquarters is in Chicago. But the school that I worked with, the campus was in Atlanta. So I'm giving you these excerpts, these mini stories, because with each one of them, it's important that you understand. I had to ask, I had to reach out there. I had to sometimes make myself uncomfortable. And also what I want to emphasize is many times the opportunities came from folks who, in my mind, shouldn't have known anything about the opportunities. So when Beverly and I talk a lot about employment and the things that are important to remember, that's what I emphasize. That is what I want people to really understand. You never know. And as Beverly said, it's important to carry yourself in such a way that people see you in a positive mode, even if things get tough. And I use the word resiliency a lot. To be resilient is to be able to come back from challenge, from disappointment, and from failure. In my career, I've been out of work before. And during that time, I mope around for a couple days, not many. And then I start picking up the phone. I start letting people know what happened. I start getting that resume ready. And I do want to emphasize at this point, always keep your resume pretty much ready. You want to keep it as updated as possible because as soon as anybody says, hey, send me your paperwork, you want to be able to do it. If not right on the spot, you want to be able to say, as soon as I get back to my computer, I can send you an electronic copy. Where would you like me to send it? What is your email address? And that is critical because that means you're on point, you're paying attention, you're ready to move forward. So, Beverly, that's a bit of my employment story. I also had an opportunity, great opportunity, to move from the private sector and the university sector to the public sector. And I went to work for Washington, D.C.'s Department of Transportation. And honestly, I went there thinking, well, gee, I'm just going to do some consulting there. And what happened was I had been out of work for a short time. What happened was I did the interviewing with a wonderful woman who has a small consulting business. And she said, hey, I think we've got something for you over at Department of Transportation. I started out maybe, I don't know, 10 to 20 hours a week. And I ended up there as their chief learning officer for about 3 years. So once again, an opportunity that just came from conversations. I mentioned my situation to a good friend who said, oh, I want you to meet another friend of mine. And that friend, once again, happened to own a consulting business. So it's been great. I am now officially formally retired, but I have returned to the workplace as a consultant, and I'm having an opportunity now. I'm very excited to do work with several organizations around instruction, also around facilitation, all of the things that I love. So I am back in the world of consulting. So did that answer your question, Bev?
That's wonderful. I'm sure. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's really unusual for young people to think that their parents know anything. You know what I mean? Because like you, my father's friend was instrumental in getting me a job after graduate school.
Yes.
And he happened to come to North Carolina coincidentally. Julie and I went to the same school for graduate school, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. We weren't there at the same time, but it was the same place. And this person came to the university to see how Ford Fellowship recipients, of which I was one, was faring at the school and to take the temperature to make sure everything was okay and everybody was doing well. And it just happened that he was a friend of my father's.
Hmm.
And he got me my job after graduate school. He said, come back home, come back home. And I said, no, no, I don't want to. I don't want to. He said, come back home. I know I can get a job for you. He got me a wonderful job. I still have the connections I made way back when, people I still keep in contact with, still have relationships with in terms of business, in terms of social relationships. It's just wonderful. You really have to keep and nurture those connections at each stage and phase of your life. That was excellent, Julie. Thank you.
You're
Now,
welcome.
how have you transitioned successfully from position to position over the years?
It's that's one of those great questions that you almost have to stop and think about because in so many ways you do it. I'm going to say it's almost unnatural. The way that you operate naturally is also the way that you make your moves between these jobs. And I emphasize the way you act naturally because it's important to remember one of the words I used early on to be humbled, to remember that you are the new kid on the block in the new position, even if it's in an area of expertise that you've had for a long time, even if you might know more than the people who are going to be providing orientation for you, et cetera. So one of the things that I do, and I pay attention to this, I lay back a bit, I ask some questions, and I don't really give a whole lot of opinions early on. One of the things that folks who are working in organizations, they really dread it when new people come on board and talk a lot about how things were in their old jobs. Oh, this is the way we used to do it at XYZ location. Or let me tell you how we did it at XYZ company. People are more interested in what can you do for me? And oh, by the way, in order to really understand what you can do for folks, you have to listen, you have to watch them work, and you have to ask questions. You have to observe and pay attention. One of the things that I teach quite a bit in really just about all of the workshops and courses that I focus on is the importance of good listening and questioning. Those are critical communication skills. So Beverly, to streamline that answer a little bit, that is how I transition. First of all, I'm very proud of my background, so it's not as though I, don't talk about what I've done in the past. However, most people already know what I've done in the past. That's one of the reasons I was brought into, a current assignment. So I try not to really focus too much on that unless I'm asked. The way to build credibility in your new job, in your new position, is to make sure that people believe that you respect what they do, that you see importance in that work, and that you're going to take the time to learn what they do, to learn about their issues. And by the way, that's what people really want. Because when I said, what can you do for me lately? The way to get into a new company, a new organization, and really hit the ground running is to help them with a problem or a challenge or an issue. They love that. You'll hear people talk about credibility. That's how you establish your credibility. You'll hear people say things like, yeah, she came in and she listened and she really helped us out. And sometimes you hear things like, yeah, she came in, she already knew everything. She didn't wait for us to say anything. She started making reports. She started moving people around. We kept saying, gee, how did she learn all that? She's only been here 10 minutes. And you will hear various versions of those comments. So the important thing is listen, ask questions, be humble, and do what you can to assist people where they are.
No, that's great advice, Julie. The other thing I would add, the one thing I would add is value institutional knowledge. Because to your
Mhm.
point, when I graduated from UNC, and returned back to New Jersey, I thought not that I knew everything, but I thought that I was all that in a bag of chips, only to find out that there were less educated people who were making more money than I, and I was upset about that. But they had something I didn't have. As my parents used to say, I had book knowledge. I
Mhm.
didn't have life experience. I didn't have work experience. I didn't have experience working where they work and doing what they did. So there's a value in institutional knowledge and experience, on the ground experience, getting your hands dirty and learning how to do things and respecting those who do it. We're in a situation now where everybody brings something to the table, and what they bring is valuable, and we need to respect that.
Most definitely.
Now, let me ask you this. How do you keep track of your networking? Do you have any are you using any software? Do you have a
Mhm.
system that you use?
Yeah. So I'm going to say my approach, the best way I can describe it, that I believe people would understand is I've got a blended approach. So I have on my computer, I have a very important file to me that's called consultants. I might even put the word next to it, consultants/network, because that's the way I look at that folder. Anything that has to do with my networking and keeping up with folks and making connections, I keep in that folder on my computer. I also, and you mentioned early on, old school approaches. One of my old school approaches is where folks still have business cards. I collect business cards. I've got a notebook, a paper and pencil kind of notebook, and I actually make myself notes about various meetings. various networking opportunities. I also am very big on something that my mom and dad taught me years ago in Beverly. I know your folks taught you the same thing. I still do old-fashioned thank yous. I'd like to send a thank you note. That's one way of keeping up with folks. I try to, as best I can, stay in that follow-up approach. It's interesting because I thought about it earlier today. I've got to make a follow-up call to someone that I've known many, many years. We've worked together on a great, actually, he brought me in on a great project just last year, and I need to follow up with him. So it's that combination of a file on my computer as regular, in addition to a regular old notebook.
You know, that's really good advice. And by sending a handwritten note or card in today's digital electronic world, it distinguishes you from everyone else.
Yeah.
They'll remember it.
Yeah.
Because you took the time to buy a card,
Yes.
find a card, write a card. Not only did you thank them, it's the way you thank them.
Yes. And you know what I would say, Bev? I would be the first to admit, can you do that with every contact? No.
No.
Can you do it maybe a couple times a month? Yeah. So, whoever it is that stands out in your mind, someone you want to say a special thank you to, I just think it goes such a long way. And interestingly enough, I've actually had people reach out to me and go, oh my gosh, a handwritten note. I haven't seen that in so long. That was so great. How are you? And so it becomes another piece of the networking process.
Exactly. Now, if the person you're thanking is a blogger, you won't send him or her a handwritten note, but you send them an e-card.
Correct.
You have to thank people for taking the time to spend on something that's important to you.
Yes.
And
that's the important thing.
Take nothing for granted.
Yes.
Nothing for granted. We're going to end soon, Jules. So what networking suggestions do you have for our listeners who may want to move up in their organizations or move to another position with another employer?
Yeah, good question. So there are several things that I'd say. Number one, think broadly about who you want to be in touch with, who might be helpful. And Beverly said early on, you don't want folks that you're only going to reach out to when you need something. Are there people that you can really develop a nice little communication network with? Hey, maybe you do a virtual coffee, or maybe you do a get together and have coffee at Panera Bread. But you want to find folks that you're going to be comfortable with in terms of networking. That's one thing. I think another thing is to make sure that whatever you do, you make sure that you follow up, you thank folks. I think another thing is to be humble and to be honest. And if things are not going well and you really need some assistance, be very specific about what you're looking for. And those would be several things that I'd say to pay attention to.
Well, that's great, Julie. We have come to the end of our road. I think I'm going to invite you back for another podcast because I think you have more to share that would be helpful to our listeners, whatever their stage and phase of life are.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Dr. Julie Lane-Hailey.
You are very welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to Your Employment Matters with Beverly Williams. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. I truly appreciate your support, and that helps other listeners find the podcast. If you have a comment, question, or suggestion, you can reach me at bawilliams@youremploymentmatters.com. My book, Get the Job Done, is available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. Please join me again next week. Until then, remember to embrace change and differences.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.